First COVID-19 confirmed cases rise to 10,819, with 314 deaths. Senate approves President's $5.5 billion loan request. Protests continued for the 8th day in many major American cities over police murder of George Floyd. And in sport, Raw insists player selection cannot be compromised.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Nigeria's COVID-19 case numbers continue to climb day after day and has now reached 10,819. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control (NCDC) announced 241 new cases on Tuesday. Active cases stand at 7,266. 3,239 patients have been discharged and 314 have died. Lagos, the epicenter, recorded 142 of the new cases. With these numbers, the World Health Organization has confirmed that Nigeria trails South Africa in COVID-19 infections. The continent has recorded more than 150,000 cases with 4,200 deaths. Bauchi State Government's statement on Wednesday says Deputy Governor Baba Tella has tested positive to the novel coronavirus. Senior Special Assistant on Media to the State Governor Mokhtar Gidado indicates that the test was confirmed by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Gidado says the Deputy Governor was tested after showing symptoms of the virus. He said the Deputy Governor's contacts have all been screened. The statement says the Deputy Governor contracted the disease while discharging his duties as Chairman of the State Committee on COVID-19. News Agency of Nigeria reports the Deputy Governor has gone into self-isolation and that all his primary contacts have been advised to also remain in isolation until the outcome of their test results. Bauchi State has recorded 241 COVID-19 cases, 221 of whom have been discharged and 8 have died. Lagos, the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria, is facing a new challenge. It is running out of bed space for the ever-growing number of patients that are discovered every day. The government now says it would adopt a strategy of home care treatment for mild cases, but experts are warning that could be dangerous. As correspondent Deji Badmos reports, many already knew this day was coming.
Many saw coming. Even the Lagos state government had always known its COVID-19 cases could explode beyond the capacity of its healthcare infrastructure. And that's exactly what is playing out at the moment. On the average, the city now records 100 cases of COVID-19 every day. The government has been opening new isolation centers, but the infection rate is outpacing the construction of the centers.
As we open new isolation facilities, they start to fill up relatively quickly. And we're running at about between 60 and 70% bed occupancy now.
Part of the reasons why there's still some bed space left in the isolation centers is because patients are getting discharged. But there's one other worrying reason.
As we diagnose and we try to evacuate the patients to the isolation centers, we're finding it difficult finding some patients. And the trend is increasing.
Authorities say the runaway patients are choosing to isolate themselves in different places, and it's partly for that reason and the overstretched isolation centers that it is now adopting a home care management of patients with mild to moderate cases.
The concept of home isolation is being practiced by many Nigerians, even though it is not yet a state or a national policy. But the people of Lagos are practicing home isolation, which is one of the reasons why we as government are trying to transition to home care, home-based, because it's happening anyway.
But medical experts in the city are divided over the issue of home care management.
The number of persons coming into the isolation centers is higher than the number of persons that are exiting from the isolation centers. And I'm sure this has prompted the need to reconsider the treatment pattern, especially for asymptomatic cases. So I totally am in line with the propositions of the Lagos State government.
In the slum, you have people that are staying like 5, 6, 10, 20 in a room. No sanitary condition, no hygiene, no sanitation, no water supply. And then now you are transferring these people to such community and such house for home management. They have to stay in a room. They have to be alone inside that room. They have to use a different toilet. They have to use different utensils. Who's going to take charge of them?
The Lagos State government says managing a single patient in an isolation center is costing around $130. The government is also projecting the number of cases in the city could hit around 120,000 by July. So the home care management policy might just be a difficult proposal to ignore.
Coming up, African news. Tunisia suspends chloroquine treatment for COVID-19 patients. And later, international news. Protests over police murder of George Floyd continues in many U.S. cities.
You are watching ANN.
Tell them. They told me you are the best around here.
What can I do for you, sir?
I want my own very, very simple. I don't want any shine. If I see any shine.
Actually, I'd love some sequins on my skirt. And I don't like any frills.
I beg, I want frills on mine. But it must not be too tight.
Tight! That tight now, that is what I want. And the transition.
Oh, you know what? I want a gown.
Me too. I want to come to burn.
You know what GMS are doing this for coming? Hey, did you capture all the information?
Of course not.
Actually.
Fantastic!
I give my customers what they love because everyone has their unique style. So why should they wear the same thing? Just like MTN for me, which gives unique data and recharge offers just the way you like it. Just dial *121# and turn up great offers every day.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Cameroon says coronavirus cases have spiked in the country after schools reopened on Monday. 254 new cases were reported on Monday and 188 on Tuesday. Total number of cases in the country now stands at 6,585 and 200 deaths. The government says it has put safety measures in place to protect learners as they resume school. This includes cleaning of classrooms and distribution of sanitizers and face masks. Final year and university students who resumed studies also observed social distancing as they sat meters apart. Local news websites had reported that educational officials threatened teachers who failed to report back to school after some of them expressed concern about the rising coronavirus cases. Tunisia says it has suspended the use of chloroquine in treating COVID-19 patients in the country. A member of the Standing Committee for the Fight Against Coronavirus says the country made the move because of the drop in the number of COVID-19 patients in the hospitals. And correspondent Adlin Chawochi reports.
Tunisian health authorities have justified the decision to suspend the use of hydroxychloroquine by the drop in the number of patients. In fact, only one patient was hospitalized out of a total of 72 active cases under surveillance at the start of June.
Tunisia has just one patient at the hospital. We have approached the hydroxychloroquine issue in an objective way. It was first used in the world because the virus appeared suddenly and we were not prepared. We hoped that the chloroquine would stop the development of the cells and to help the immune system to protect the lungs and the body in general, but the results were not very satisfactory.
Dr. Gergah added that the World Health Organization announced the pausing of clinical trials with hydroxychloroquine, which it is conducting with its partners in several countries as a precautionary measure.
The decision was taken following the publication of a study on May 2nd in the Lancet Medical Journal, deeming ineffective, even harmful, the use of chloroquine or its derivatives such as hydroxychloroquine against COVID-19. The study was made following tests on 96,000 patients in 671 hospitals around the world.
The Ministry of Health announced that 400,000 rapid tests will be carried out on the medical and paramedical staff and thousands of security guards, the military, as well as policemen.
Tunisia has survived the pandemic because the national strategy and the prevention measures were right from the beginning. Now large-scale testing aims to further control the disease, prevent its spread and to isolate any cluster of infections with coronavirus.
Experts at the National Observatory of New and Emerging Diseases will conduct surveys after the rapid tests have been carried out in order to assess the overall epidemiological situation in Tunisia.
The COVID-19 task force has announced that the detection of some imported cases of coronavirus infection does not preclude declaring the end of the pandemic in Tunisia if there is no domestic contamination in 40 days.
Egypt's economy has been slowed down by COVID-19 and some infrastructural projects have also slowed. But the government is accelerating maintenance of its roads as stay-at-home measure has cleared the roads of traffic. Correspondent Adu El Marouki has the details.
While the coronavirus pandemic has greatly slowed down the Egyptian economy, the government's National Roads project is building up speed. The partial lockdown imposed to curb the spread of the virus has forced millions to stay at home and thereby lifting traffic off the streets. It's a great opportunity for the government to complete paving roads and maintenance needed to repair bridges.
Previously, Egypt used to spend millions to erect roads, then leave most of them unmaintained. Today, with each new road built, a maintenance plan is set to ensure its long-term service to the public. Nearly 25 bridges in Egypt are completely unsafe for vehicles because they never got the required maintenance. Work now to repair them is on full throttle.
The National Roads project is adding more than 7,000 kilometers of highway to Egypt's new residential and industrial cities. It includes some 40 bridges and at least 5 tunnels to connect the Sinai Peninsula with the Egyptian mainland. With it, the government is hoping to put an end to Egypt's $1.8 billion of losses due to a horrific number of deadly accidents every year.
We used to suffer a lot, not only from financial losses but also in lives, because of the collapsing roads infrastructure. Deadly accidents used to take place almost daily due to lack of safety measures. All new roads are now being built based on global safety requirements, which will make movement faster and safer.
The National Roads project began in 2014 and will extend until 2030. Egypt is allocating more than $1 billion for the project. With the progress made so far, Cairo's statistical body says it registered a 41% drop in roads accidents. The Egyptian Prime Ministry says the project has also pushed Egypt 90 positions upwards globally in terms of roads quality.
The government is now investing more in the quality of roads built. That will help save money on the long run. There are a lot of important roads getting built inside major cities at tremendous speed. That must be followed with tight supervision over vehicle loads because violations used to be common, which was the reason of deteriorating roads in the past.
Development in Egyptian cities is considered a vital step for the National Roads project. It aims to widen streets to speed up vehicle movement to connect it faster with the newly built highways.
When we return, international news. Protests over police murder of George Floyd continues in many U.S. cities. And later, sports. Super Eagles coach Gennett Rohr insists player selection cannot be compromised.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Tens of thousands of protesters in the United States defied curfews to express their grievances for the 8th consecutive night. They are on the streets marching against the Minneapolis police killing of African-American man George Floyd. President Trump has threatened to send the military on the streets if violent protests do not stop. Large rallies also took place in Philadelphia, Atlanta, Denver, Seattle, and many other major cities in the U.S. Protesters are demanding arrest of the 4 officers involved in the murder. Only the main officers who knelt on the victim's neck has been indicted. Thousands of demonstrators gathered outside the White House on Tuesday. Some shouted their complaints at National Guard members. Protesters in New York defied curfew for a second straight night, marching across the Manhattan Police Bridge from Brooklyn. The hundreds of thousands of protesters across the country have just one demand: an all-out racial justice in the country. What is happening in the United States is also happening in France, where several protesters ignored COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. They tripped onto the streets of Paris to pay homage to George Floyd and Adama Traoré, a 24-year-old black Frenchman who died in a 2016 police operation following a dispute over an identity check. He lost consciousness in a police vehicle and died at a nearby police station. He was still handcuffed when paramedics arrived. Paris streets were filled with tear gas fumes as riot police faced off with protesters who had set fires as global outrage grew over Floyd's death in the United States. They are also outraged over racial injustice and heavy-handed police tactics around the world. French protesters struggled to create a peaceful atmosphere as a largely peaceful multiracial demonstration degenerated into violence. Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam says the attacks and criticisms on the new national security legislation is unnecessary.
Certainly not justified to criticize or attack this act of introducing legislation to enhance and improve safeguarding national security in Hong Kong. Every country in the world needs national security legislation. So why should Hong Kong be an exception? Hong Kong is an inalienable part of the People's Republic of China. So I would say that to sort of jump into a conclusion that any such national security legislation is not going to be good, is going to take away Hong Kong's freedom, are totally unsubstantiated. The National People's Congress Standing Committee, in preparing the national security legislation, has to follow 5 very important principles. And I don't think anybody could argue against those principles. Those principles is: 1 is to uphold one country, 2 systems. Secondly is to safeguard national security. And third is, which is a very important one, is to uphold all the rights and freedoms enjoyed by the Hong Kong people. And there was a further elaboration to say that the enactment of a national security legislation is not going to change, I repeat, it's not going to change the high degree of autonomy enjoyed by the Hong Kong SAR.
As life gradually returns to normal in Germany, hotels, bars and restaurants are now open for business, but with strict hygiene regulations. Reporter Nathaniel Connie visited some of the establishments.
Tegernsee is back open for tourism. This beautiful lakeside resort town an hour south of Munich, close to the Austrian border, is a well-known weekend getaway. But since the onset of COVID-19 and subsequent lockdown in mid-March, all tourism traffic here effectively stopped. But the community is slowly crawling back to life, following the reopening of restaurants last week, and now that of hotels, guest houses and leisure facilities.
The biggest mantra that the government tells us is distance, 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 and I totally understand that. So we took out tables from the restaurants, all the guests, but also we have to run around with masks.
In some German states, there is a cap on the hotel's capacity, and in Bavaria, despite the hot weather, pools remain closed, yet guests don't seem to be bothered.
We missed it a lot because it was a tough time to being always at home, staying, only working, no free time, no such pretty places like this.
Despite a 60% occupancy rate here in the first few days of reopening, huge financial losses in the hotel industry are expected as a result of the coronavirus restrictions that have sunk the German economy into a deep recession.
Throughout the period of closures, hotels in the major cities were allowed to accept some essential overnight stays. It's more these smaller family-run facilities in more specific tourist locations that have really borne the brunt of the losses.
Economically, since the shutdown, we have a 100% loss of all revenue. We used the time as good as we could to do stuff which normally would influence guests in a negative way. So that's good, but the loss is terrible and we will not be able to recoup it.
A government short-term employment program has allowed many hotels to keep their staff, but other financial aid packages have not been enough to cushion the blow, says Kohler. In a boost to tourism ahead of the summer holidays, Germany will reopen its borders with France, Switzerland, Austria, Denmark, and to those arriving by air from Italy and Spain in mid-June. The concern now is over whether they will come.
Up next, sports. Raw insists player selection cannot be compromised. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you'll need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, Africa News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sport. Super Eagles head coach Gernot Rohr says players who are not good enough to represent the country will not be on his team. Rohr signed a new 2-year contract with the Nigeria Football Federation last week with new clauses that include scouting for local players for domestic leagues. He says despite these clauses, his player selection will not be compromised by anyone. Boxing former champion Floyd Mayweather has offered to pay for George Floyd's funeral and memorial service, and Floyd's family has accepted the offer. The funeral will take place next Tuesday in Floyd's hometown of Houston. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.
in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.